feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled TIFF review. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Merchin.
Matt, it's day 3 of the film festival. Cut my thumb during a press junket for Causeway, which we'll have a review for once the embargo lifts.
As well as that interview that you did.
Yes. So that will be exciting. I'll also talk about a little thing that happened, I think, maybe in the wrap-up at the end of the show, just to save it.
Pretty wild morning, but we'll save that story.
Yeah. So it was my first interview in 3 years with the director, Leah.
In person.
Neuenberg. So it went well, but you have that trepidation going in where you haven't done something in person for a long time, right. And you just kind of feel like
this festival as a whole, really.
Yeah, the social interaction, is not as secondhand as it used to be.
Right. But we'll get to that at another time. Today we are reviewing Nicholas Stoller's Bros, starring Billy Eichner and many more, but Billy Eichner co-wrote the film as well and stars in it. So it is, and we'll get into it, but very much his movie, it feels like. But how are you? I guess you already kind of went over it.
How are you, man?
I'm good. I feel good. Only got home at like 1:30 a.m. last night, 2 a.m. and was starving. We ate like basically just a hot dog, and then that was it yesterday. I had a hot dog and fries during Roost.
Of course.
And then everything went downhill from there, food-wise at least.
And movie-wise too. Let's be real with Roost.
Yeah, with Roost at least, but that's another day. But yes, we attended the world premiere of Bros last night. Let's get into it. Eric, you kick it off.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, this is a film that stars and is co-written by Billy Eichner, who plays Bobby Lieber, a very proud and out gay man living in New York and living his best single life, as he says in the opening prologue of the film, kind of setting up the tone of the movie, which if you've seen, a Judd Apatow movie or a Nicholas Stoller film, from the director of Forgetting Sarah Marshall, or again, the way that Apatow works with a lot of comedians when they're trying to tailor their own kind of showcase role, you become familiar with the beats. You have a very sweet, raunchy rom-com that is the first official R-rated gay rom-com. So with that, there's expectations to, deliver something that is both going to be accessible to a mainstream audience, but also specific to the LGBTQ plus community. And with that, I think you get a pretty good, enjoyable movie that maybe isn't as funny as you would hope it would be, but still has enough poignancy and a really good performance from Billy Eichner in the lead role as kind of more of a heightened version of himself.
Yeah, I think that's why.
If you can believe a more heightened version of himself. But there's moments in the film where he has a couple of monologues that aren't necessarily just about,
his
social political causes
either,
or, history's eraser of, gay icons and activists throughout the ages, but also just very much about vulnerabilities and putting yourself out there, on the dating scene and being a little bit older as well, and not wanting to get yourself hurt emotionally. And there's a sequence in a club where he meets your classic bro type guy, Aaron, played by Luke McFarland, who's Canadian,
one of the most handsome men I've ever seen.
Very handsome gentleman. They make jokes about him being kind of almost like a Tom Brady knockoff, and also very charismatic. He's so well cast in that kind of he has the look of your classic high school jock who peaked at that point and maybe he kind of didn't go on to have that career that he wanted, and you see him in this movie as kind of a lawyer who kind of subjugates wills and is hating his life and hates both having to kind of hide certain aspects or be a little uncomfortable with who he is compared to Billy Eichner's Bobby character. And so it's a nice kind of balance between the two as they kind of navigate this relationship and what the relationship is, because it's not a heterosexual comedy, so it's not going to play by those rules, and it tries to break out of that. And again, the majority of the cast, if all of the cast, are on the LGBTQ plus sort of community, and embracing that, I think, is really wonderful as well.
And stuff like that. All the like main roles and secondary roles, I believe, were played by people in that community. Yeah, I'm mostly with you, man. Like, I think at its best, it's when Billy Eichner. It feels very personal to Billy Eichner. We're recording. What's up? What's up? What's up? We're saying hi to our Elevation friends. When it feels the most personal to Billy, I feel like is when the movie is at its best, and I think when it feels the most Nicholas Stoller, I think the movie is at its worst. And then that's what I was kind of fighting with throughout the whole thing. Like, I really love those monologues you talked about. There's a great one on confidence. On confidence on a beach in P-Town. What's it called?
Provincetown.
Provincetown. Billy Eichner delivers this fantastic meta monologue that feels both true to his character in the movie, but also just true to life, and how important this movie feels, like being the first studio gay rom-com, like feels like treated just as seriously as any of Nicholas Stoller's other big raunchy R-rated comedies and things like that. So like, and there are, I think when the movie gets into those moments and feels like at its most personal, I really, really enjoyed it. And like you said, Eichner's playing a heightened version of himself. That's why I think he's very good, because it feels very natural to him. The comedy for me was the thing that I kept going back and forth on. There are some great jokes, and in a rom-com, and especially a comedy coming from the guy who made Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and Get Him to the Greek is fine. But Neighbors I actually really like as well. But it was a hit or miss for me, and which I feel like a lot of studio comedies are like that, and it's either going to land with you or it's not. And we talk about this a lot on our shows, that I feel like comedies, and a lot of movies you can argue here's why it's good or bad. I think comedies are the one that are the most subjective, where it's just like everyone has a different sense of humor, and not everything's going to land with everyone, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie. So a lot of the humor didn't particularly land with me, but there are some great bits. We talked a lot about whenever it kind of jabs at Hollywood and how it's treated the LGBTQ plus community, and like
as recently as 2009 with The Hangover. Like, it takes Bohemian Rhapsody, The Hangover, Dear Evan Hansen to task, which is also ironic because Dear Evan Hansen was the Universal movie that opened the festival last year. So
Universal allowing them to do that is pretty funny.
It spares no one, and what I also like about Billy Eichner is, like, you can tell he is a movie lover. Like, he's a guy that, even though he makes a lot of really pointed arguments that are legit, he still loves watching movies, embracing film, and like it's a part of his life. And then the other part of it that we haven't really mentioned in terms of, like, I guess the main plot on top of the relationship and navigating the dating scene, is that he is trying to open up this LGBTQ plus National Museum in New York, and sort of him with the board members kind of again trying to figure out how to get the remaining donations that they need, and also just figure out what they're going to do with the last wing. And there's an interesting conversation with how the community has been betrayed in both film and documentaries and television, and just in general with, like, is it always about suffering, right? Is it always about tragedy? Why can't it be something that is positive and proactive, and not just simply misery in order to emote a feeling from the heteronormative world?
Even though that's a lot of the history, because we've treated that community so shitty over the history,
or just
of time.
not acknowledge them at all.
And I think that's, again, when the movie gets into that stuff, I think it's at its best. And don't get me wrong, when I said the comedy was hit or miss, I still laughed a hell of a lot at the movie.
And Stoller never gets in the way of Billy Eichner. Like, I think that's really important. And it's the same way with, like, Judd Apatow, when Apatow was working with people like Seth Rogen for Knocked Up, or Amy Schumer for Trainwreck, where it's like,
it's almost like you said, a spotlight on that comedian. They kind of inject themselves into it.
Because these directors, they let the voice shine through. Where I'd say maybe the biggest problem with Bros and a lot of Judd Apatow productions in general is that it is too long for what it is, and like it goes on and on and on. But again, with something like this, it kind of works a little bit better in just terms of like the monologuing. It has that flow. But I think you're absolutely right with the comedy being very hit or miss. I do appreciate that it is very sexual and it's not afraid to embrace, intimacy and vulnerability, with two gay men figuring out whether or not they want to have, a healthy, happy relationship together. So there's a lot of things to really like about this movie and even love about this film, and it's just a really solid movie.
And I think very important too, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that kind of outweighs a lot of the other kind of criticisms and things like that. Like, I think this will actually kill, like, for most people, and like especially for people who have wanted something like this for so long. And like, you get indie films and smaller films and art house movies but like for Universal and a big studio to do this big kind of broad comedy, and it does feel broad, even though it's obviously hasn't really ever been done before.
Right.
Like, it does feel accessible, it does feel broad. It is like a tried and true genre, and it kind of follows the tropes of
even referencing them, whether it be When Harry Met Sally or You've Got Mail, which is always seems to be like the punching line or punchline to things now in a lot of movies when it comes to rom-coms.
And it is a rom-com, right? For better or for worse, right? Because like, I'm not a huge rom-com guy. Like, I think they're the odd one that kind of elevates that genre a little bit, but I understand why people really like them. It is a tried and true genre, and I feel like this kind of sticks to that and can fall in with any of those movies we mentioned, both for the great parts and kind of the not so great parts, with like, the classic rom-com stuff of always needing to have a falling out and coming, like, those.
But the fallout here seems to be a little bit more legitimate than just simply someone cheated on somebody or someone has second thoughts. Like, it is actually about who they are as a person.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying it still has
you still have to, you're waiting for that shoe
You're
to
just
drop.
putting that spin on it, right? To make it true to these characters in this movie. But you still have to have that. Like, it still has those, like, make a rom-com for dummies kind of thing. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just like, that's what they were trying to do, and I think they succeeded with that. So,
but it doesn't feel as contrived as, say, some rom-coms where it's like we have to have something that, like, disrupts it, and it sometimes feels a little bit like, okay, well, like some falling out has to happen, or maybe one person.
The meet cute and things like that. They put their own spin on all those things, which I think is great. Overall, I really did enjoy it. I don't know if I'm like over the moon about it or anything like that, but I think I love that Eichner put his personal kind of touch on the thing and really kind of. What really stands out is like the moments at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Like his monologues that he kind of has that feels the most personal. And then I think
centerpieces of the film.
Yeah, and then the broad comedy stuff that seems more because it's co-written by Nicholas Stoller too. Like I feel like that's the kind of stuff that maybe comes from him that I don't love as much,
and maybe some of the structure as well, just like in terms of like getting those like beats into like okay, well, we got to move the plot from A to B, and like being the romance and sort of how it kind of transpires over a short period of time.
Totally. And for a guy who's made multiple movies like this before, not necessarily exactly like this, but broad comedies and like
but even rom-coms in a way, or like anti-rom-coms. I mean, Forgetting Sarah Marshall is a sort of a breakup comedy.
That's
right?
Definitely true. I did enjoy it. I think I think people will really, really dig it when it comes to theaters, and I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm also gonna give it a 3.5, and I just want to quickly give a shout out to Amanda Beers, who plays Luke McFarlane's mom, a grade 2 teacher who was on Married with Children and also played Amy in the original Fright Night movie. Nice to see her again, and she's quite delightful.
A lot of good
film.
cameos, which a Judd Apatow comedy always has. Right? Like some better than others,
but some also again playing with stereotypes, right? Like in sort of like how like certain icons within the gay community are portrayed, and sort of trying to break that down, but also saying like, oh, maybe there is some truth to it, but like it's just a really fascinating sort of piece of progression that feels more positive than it is about just doom and gloom.
And to be fair, we're both cis white straight men.
Yeah.
So like, you know, when I say some of the humor doesn't land with me, it's like,
so take
maybe
it with,
it's not,
with an asterisk
yeah, you know,
from
like,
us.
I think
you know?
people in the LGBTQ community, there's a lot of jokes in there that are made for that community.
Yeah.
Right? This movie is made for them. Not that it's not made for us either. Like, it is a broad comedy, and I mean,
It's
that as
very
a compliment.
accessible, yeah.
It's very accessible. But I feel like, just like anything that feels like written for you, a lot of those jokes I think will land even harder, right? Like,
Yeah.
where not necessarily that I missed something, but it's not necessarily written, you know, for a cis white straight man.
No.
But again, even there's a joke at the beginning that they want him to write something that a straight white guy can take his girlfriend to.
Right.
And I think
which I think like I remember like Billy Eichner had been working on this for a while and was trying to pitch it, and you can tell that like this is literally
What
every
he went
pitch
through,
meeting
yeah.
he went through to studios to get this thing made, and for it to be as singular in his voice as
Yeah.
it is an amazing accomplishment.
And I don't think it panders to
No.
those groups. Like,
No.
I think that joke at the beginning says that. And I think it ends up doing that. I think it ends up being accessible in a movie that, you know, I could go with my wife too. But like,
Yeah.
I don't think like when studio heads go make that movie, that's not necessarily the movie he made. It just ended up being that way. And I think it's great.
And shout out to concave chests.
Yeah, I have a weird, like, crooked chest kind of thing. Anyways, go check out Bros when it releases in theaters in November.
No, September, the end of September.
Is
Yeah,
it
it's the-
already that
yeah.
close? Guys,
It's-
it's TIFF. I have no idea when release dates of movies
I think
are.
it is either the 23rd or the last week of September.
Bros movie. You know, we just want to give you guys the right information. But thank you all for listening or watching. We really, really do appreciate it. September 30th. Yeah, Eric's right. I'm wrong, as always.
I'm surprised I'm right today. So
Automotive industry.
Burlington.
You're in the right spot. Untitled movie reviews. All of TIFF will have, you know, we started with 30 plus reviews. Maybe it'll be 20 plus reviews. Maybe it'll be 25. We'll see.
We'll also do a roundup at the end of the festival
Yeah.
as well, and so you know there's going to be plenty of content, but we're just making sure that we're getting stuff out either after we've seen it, so it coincides with the premiere, so the
Premieres, yeah.
embargo lifts, because you know we're under that obligation, and we
But you should get
respect
2
that,
to 3 reviews per day
Yeah.
for the next kind of week and a half. So we have reviews up right now for
I Like Movies,
I Like Movies,
which
we
was
just
just
posted,
recently
yeah.
published. Weird, the Al Yankovic story.
Yeah.
The Swimmers.
Yeah.
We also, as you're probably listening to this, a review for Clement Virgo's brother.
Yeah.
So that'll be another one. And then you can also stay tuned that we'll have reviews for Steven Spielberg's The Fablemans,
that's today,
and
baby. Let's go.
Ryan Johnson's Glass Onion.
Yeah.
A Knives Out mystery.
I'm at that point of the festival already where I'm like, what have I seen?
Right. Well, also with a lot of the stuff that we did
Pre-screen,
and
women
we didn't,
talking and other things.
yeah,
like that
and
too.
again, we'll have that stuff released when you know the public
premieres
screening,
happen, yeah.
the premieres have happened.
Yeah. Okay. Untitled_movies over on Letterboxd is probably your best one-stop shop. If you want the audio versions over there, go to the reviews. If you want the video versions, which are audio versions during the festival, they're up there too. So thank you all again. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com. Follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Martin. You can find more of my video reviews on RogersTV.com/CinemaScene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
Fuck Bohemian Rhapsody.